Greetings, and welcome to the third episode of Jank, Brew's Weekly. This is a series where I talk about decks that are generally more for fun than for being competitive, and I do a cycle of the formats that I personally have a lot of fun playing. And this week, actually, most of the decks that you're going to be playing in it are for fun anyway, and that's because we're talking about Brawl this week. This is the most recent format that Wizards has released. It is a take on the Commander format, which we will be doing next week. But essentially, how it works is you have a commander creature or planeswalker that determines your color identity and which cards can be included in the deck. You can only run one of each non-basic land card with the same name. And besides that, it's pretty straightforward 60-card deck with the commander in the command zone. Now, the deck that we're going to be talking about today is a lot of fun. This one I call Elder Tribal. The deck is, again, it's not going to be very competitive. You could try playing this at FNM, but I would highly dissuade you from doing so. It's not gonna give you a good time because you're going to be running up against decks that aren't singleton, that have more than one of each card, and they will generally be more consistent than you will in being able to do what you want, especially because at standard FNM you're not allowed to have your commander, which for this deck, for Elder Tribal, a lot of the elders are actually really expensive, and they're across all 5 of the colors. So we're going to be running Joda, Archmage Eternal, as the commander. This guy is awesome. I've considered running him as a commander for EDH, which tells you something about the power level where he's at, because EDH is one of the highest power level formats in the game of Magic. But he's a 4/3 flyer. I always forget he has flying, but that's actually relevant sometimes. He costs 1 blue, red, white, but that's not the color identity he has, because in addition to that, he also has a cost on his card for white, blue, black, red, and green, which allows him to have a 5-color identity, which allows you to run cards of any color in your deck. And that cost in his box is actually really important for the deck because, again, the Elders are really, really expensive when it comes to mana costs, and being able to play them cheaper usually means that you'll be able to win the game with them more. His alternative cost for costing Wooburg is a bit difficult to do in standard. Your mana base isn't going to be as consistent as in a lot of the other formats. However, I haven't run into any problems with it, and honestly, Joda has just been a lot of fun to play with. Now, what are the elders in standard? Well, we have 5 Elder Dragons released recently in M19. Arcades, Chromium, Nicol Bolas, Palladia, and Vivictus are all really powerful cards on their own, except for, I'm going to put a little bit of personal here. I think Palladium Wars is a bit of a disappointment. She could be a lot better, personally. But nonetheless, you have 5 Elder Dragons here spreading across all of the colors, and they're all individually really impactful on the board, and being able to cast them early with Joda is going to make the game go by a lot more smoothly for you. Nicol Bolas and Arcades are also 2 of your cheapest spells in the deck, so you kind of want to see those in your starting hand in order to have something to cast a little sooner than turn 5. Besides that, there's 5 more Elders that come in a cycle, and that's the Elder Dinosaurs from Rivals of Ixalan, Zetalpa, Nazal, Tetzmoc, Atali, and Galta. They are all monocolored, and again, just like with the dragons, they're all individually very powerful. They can make huge swings on the board state, and Galta is also one of the best cards you want to see, because you will be able to usually chain it together with something else that you've cast cheaper using Joda. Besides that, Atali and Vivictus, which I forgot to mention, are also ways to cheat out your more expensive spells if you can get them down, and they are really fun to use in multiplayer games. They can add a lot of variety, and Atali becomes infinitely more powerful the more people's libraries you can use. Besides that, there are 2 more Elders, actually, in the standard format, which are going to be Demon Lord Belzenlock and Zakama. Elder Demon and Elder Dinosaur, they are also right up there with the other Elders. They're extremely expensive. Zakama is probably the most expensive spell in Standard right now, I believe. and that makes it naturally going to have a lot of really powerful things. If you can cast this early with Joda, then you will usually be able to also cast something else because of untapping your lands. Demon Lord Belzenlock is also a fantastic card advantage card in the deck because, again, a lot of your deck is going to be above 4 CMC. Besides that, we have some tribal support because we are playing Elder Tribal, and for that we have Arcane Adaptation. There are some creatures in the deck that aren't Elders, and there are some cards that actually care about dragons in the deck, and well, one card in particular, and being able to turn your elder dinosaurs into dragons as well it sometimes becomes really relevant. Metallic Mimic and Sunbird's Invocation are both tribal support in a sense. Metallic Mimic is straight up tribal support for elders, and Sunbird's Invocation, elders are also sort of high CMC tribal in a sense, and Sunbird's Invocation lets you take advantage of that a lot better. Vanquisher's Banner and Pillar of Origins are also along the lines of Metallic Mimic. They're generic. You want to be running these in your tribal decks. Pillar of Origins serves as ramp, and Vanquisher's Banner is card advantage and pumps your team. Now, along the lines of Pillar of Origins, we also have some more ramp in the deck. Drover and Naga Vitalist are two of our non-elder creatures in the deck. They tap for mana, which allows us to ramp. Treasure Map and Dragon's Hoard, again, they also... Treasure Map not as much, but it does eventually turn into treasures, which is a sort of ramp. It turns into a land as well. Dragon's Hoard is the reason why we want to turn our dinosaurs into dragons occasionally, because then it can also provide us with card advantage. Sailor Means and Grow from the Ashes are there for fixing, mostly, and also Grow from the Ashes helps us ramp a lot better in the late game. Besides that, we have a bunch of generic utility cards. Thaumatic Compass is great for color fixing. It's also good for, once you flip it, it turns into a Maze of Ith. If you're not familiar with that card, it basically says remove a creature from combat. It doesn't hurt you anymore. Awakened Amalgam, we're going to be running a lot, and I mean a lot of lands with different names because we need to have a lot of colors, and so Awakened Amalgam can usually be a massive beater. Curator's Ward is there to protect Joda. So Sentinel of the Pearl Trident, we don't want him to die because he is one of the quintessential parts of being able to actually cast our spells. So we want to be able to protect him, or once we sick one of our more impactful elders, we want to also be able to ensure that they don't get removed. River's Rebuke and Fumigate are there for board wipes in case your opponent's getting out of hand. Adventurous Impulse is just a little bit more card advantage and fixing for the early game. Immortal Sun, fantastic card. I'm pretty sure I'm going to include it in every Brawl deck until the format rotates. And Primeval's Glorious Rebirth, we're running a lot of legendaries. We're running a lot of expensive spells that would be pretty good to get back. And as stated earlier, the mana base, you're going to be running all 10 of the check lands, the ones that check for swamps or forests, and the 5 cycle lands that also have the basic land types. These are your basic ways that currently in Standard you can use to get all of the colors as effectively and consistently as you possibly can. Besides that, we're going to be running 2 of each basic land, and there you have it. That's Elder Tribal for Brawl. This deck does have some pieces that are going to be rotating out, but it's going to be getting some major buffs in the upcoming expansion. There's going to be a bit more fixing with things like Chromatic Lantern, and we're going to be able to switch out those cycle lands for shock lands, which are really, really useful. And besides that, this deck, as I said, the entire format of Brawl is pretty much just for fun. Nobody plays it competitively, at least not in my area, but in case it does take off and people start playing it, this is a deck that you could definitely play for fun. I don't know how competitive it would be, but I've had a blast playing it. So, as usual, if you're still watching, thank you very much for sticking through with this, and I will see you again next week for Commander.